My name is Alan Polga. I'm the manager of communications at IQ Metrics. You might have seen some of the material that we generate on our blog, the News and Views newsletter, and also on our social media outlets on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, etc. So we really do try to be as engaged as we can as a company, and yeah, we really like to stimulate a discussion between you folks as wireless retailers to see what best practices you guys have to suggest to the rest of the audience.
Thanks. And my name is Farshid Salvish. I'm the manager of our partner program, so I have a direct relationship with our partners and hopefully most of the vendors that you guys use and interact with every day. And part of my role is to really make sure that their brand and their products are exposed to as many amount of our customers as possible.
And both of us work pretty actively on our social media accounts to promote both the IQ Metrics brand, our products, and our partners' products as well. As I mentioned, our format is going to be a quick presentation, about half hour, where we're just going to talk about different strategies and best practices for social media, specifically for businesses. We're going to follow that with a 20-minute open discussion. We have some questions that we'd like to ask the audience if you have any anecdotes or experiences you'd like to share. And we've also already posted a follow-up social media cheat sheet that you can consult and check out on the Summit website. It's actually on the listing for this very session on the agenda. If you click through to the session, you'll see social media cheat sheet. It's a PDF that you can click through, have a look at with all the highlights from this presentation, share it with your coworkers, and hopefully stimulate some discussion amongst yourselves after that too. We'll post a QR code that you can beam directly to that cheat sheet with at the end.
So before we get started, I'll just throw out a general question. By show of hands, how many of you in this room have your own personal Twitter or Facebook account? Everybody here, most people there, and just hold them up, please. Okay. So how many of you in this room have a Twitter or social media account for your business?
Good. This is way better. This is way better adoption rate than we had last year. I think last year at the summit, a lot of our attendees, it was their first time really getting on Twitter. So yeah, no, this is really encouraging, and I think we have a really engaged audience.
That's great. Okay. So to get started, we'll share these two images that are really popular on the website, and really in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, try to explain social media in a nutshell. So another thing that this shows is you could really use social media to promote just about any topic or any subject. So, for example, with Twitter, it would be something like "I need to pee" or #P.
That's real time.
With Facebook, it's "Hey, I peed," and then see how many likes you get. With Foursquare, you can tell your friends where you're peeing, and then they can follow you. With Quora, it's "Hey, why am I peeing?" And then you can send it to the industry and wait for feedback. With YouTube, of course, just, I don't know, you may not want to post a video of you peeing, but you can. And finally with LinkedIn.
Not on your corporate account though.
Not on ours. And with LinkedIn, it's, "Hey, I'm good at peeing," or "Check out my peeing references."
The picture on the right is an Instagram photo from somebody's whiteboard at the office. It's really quite funny. Some of you might be familiar with Instagram. It was recently acquired by Facebook because Zuckerberg and company really want to control as much social media traffic related to photos as they can. So it was a pretty savvy acquisition on their part. Also on that list that isn't on the left side is Pinterest, which should be of interest to retailers as well. We'll get into that in a little bit. Last.fm is a user-generated online radio station. Frankly, I don't really know how social that medium is, so I really don't think it fits, but that's okay. Google Plus obviously is new, and it's Google's response to, and it's their answer to Facebook multimedia sharing on the Google ecosystem, but it's also really interesting too for search engine optimization, so we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. I wanted to give you a little background around IQ Metrics and what our audiences are and how they differ from your audiences. As a software company, we're primarily B2B, business to business, whereas many of you guys are business to consumer. So one of the first things you need to understand when using social media to promote your brand is your audience. You really need to know who you're trying to reach out to. You can't just generate messages randomly or expect certain actions to take place on their end unless you really understand the type of stuff they're looking for. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more too, is really delivering value to your audiences. At IQ Metrics, our audiences are you, our customers, also our partner companies, the media, as we try to promote ourselves as experts in our field of wireless and in retail, and sort of looking down the line as well, tech analysts and investors. If we do pursue venture capital at some point, we're also reaching out to those audiences to a lesser extent as well.
So, who are your company's audiences? I'm sure similar to ours, they're segmented in different ways. So your customers, the people that come into your store every day and really cause you to grow, and obviously what you want to do is try to get them back as much as possible, and if they're not physically in your store, you want to have presence in their social media and at the same time have them interact with what you guys are doing. As well as partners, similar to ours, I'm sure you guys work with vendors and people that allow you to improve your business, so it'd be more of a B2B type of relationship. Potential employees. You know, the demographic of the people that work in your store typically tend to be people that are really well versed in social media. So
young people,
yeah.
Generation Y, they know how to use social media, and this is a really fertile audience for you because people are using social media on their mobile devices every day. Some people only do social media on their phones. So if you can really demonstrate your expertise and your knowledge of social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn integrations, how the apps work on these different phones, you can really position yourselves as leaders, not only in mobile, but also in social media.
And they want to work where it's fun, and then they promote that with their friends and their social influence. Advertisers, does that could work as well, where you want to promote different things and you could partner up with certain advertisers to do those announcements on social media.
It's interesting too because you can actually use your social media presence as a co-branded advertisement opportunity with another company. You know, say you do a fundraiser with a partner company, you know, take pictures of that on Instagram or tweet about it, tweet from the live event, and that way you're generating recognition for your brand and your partner's brand at the same time.
Who else? Did I leave something off? Anybody have any suggestions of who else you guys communicate with?
You can just yell it out if there's somebody we've missed that you communicate with on social media. Let us know. We can also examine this a little further in the Q&A portion at the end.
But the ultimate message, regardless of who you're trying to communicate with, is trying to provide value. Don't just communicate for the sake of communicating, but before you send out that Twitter message or that Facebook update or that update on LinkedIn, think of what value you're delivering and who's going to look at that on the other end.
I want to elaborate on that a little bit because as I mentioned, IQ Metrics, we're a software company and we're trying to provide value to you folks, our customers, in the content we generate. We curate a lot of news from the industry, both wireless and retail oriented, and that sort of messaging, we believe, and obviously we'd love to have your feedback on as well, it helps you save time, staying on top of trends, staying on top of the hottest new devices, operating systems, etc., apps, which really try to, and even just innovation in retail as an industry as a whole. So what the value we're trying to pass on to our audience is really, you know, we're on top of this stuff so that, you know, we can help you stay on top of it as well. Now, obviously that's business to business. Business to consumer is completely different. What type of value do you want to deliver to your end consumer? These are people that are coming in to buy phones from you, that want to know how they work better, that might have, you know, really simple needs that you can help them with on social media. And Twitter, for example, is a really novel way for you to communicate with them directly, answer their questions, or even ask questions of them to get feedback directly on the phone that you sold them to. So even there's a brand association at play when you connect with them on the phone that they bought from you. So. Okay, yeah, really quickly, I wanted to talk about the social networks that we use. Again, it's different from business to business and business to consumer, but really at the end, we're trying to provide value, and then we can sort of stimulate a discussion beyond that. So, like I said, we generate our own content on the Daily Dose blog, which also populates our bi-weekly News and Views newsletter that we send via email to many of you. You're probably already subscribing to it, get it every second Wednesday. I curate that, and like I said, we try to keep it as fresh as we can and deliver value to you through it. Twitter is our most effective engagement tool on social media. And again, because Twitter was born from the 140-character SMS message, it's really text-based, it's quick, and it's like the most mobile of any of the social networks. So really, you get the information you need in as efficient a medium as you can, and things just really propagate themselves in conversations, hashtags, etc. Facebook is the #1 social network in the world, the most popular social network in the world, so if you want people to see your brand, you gotta be there. Google Plus is the same sort of thing, but again, it's within the Google network, and it also allows you to increase your ranking when people are searching where they can buy a cell phone in their local area. If you're present on Google Plus, that's gonna help your brand rank higher. YouTube, if you ever have a really cool video or a TV ad that you've put a lot of resources into, you got to put it on YouTube too, because that's how things go viral. And if something goes viral, people will automatically associate your brand with being funny, with being cool, or really knowing what's happening in the industry. LinkedIn, again, this is really important for us, but I really don't know how much LinkedIn applies to your employee base, how much staff you've actually recruited off of LinkedIn, maybe for management roles and sort of higher head office type roles. But again, the frontline employee within the store, you may be recruiting on LinkedIn too, so that's something we'd like to talk to you about a little bit further.
And an interesting stat between Facebook and LinkedIn and how, again, B2B and B2C companies differ. So there's a stat out there that says B2B, B2C businesses generate around 76% of leads through Facebook if they're on top of it. Well, for LinkedIn, it's actually 56% for B2B. So it shows that, you know, you don't use one tool for everything. You kind of look at, again, who your audience and who you're trying to reach. And from that, you could really key in on one or two social media rather than trying to tackle all these all the time.
The sweet thing about LinkedIn too is that it's a really great forum for demonstrating your expertise, and that's where a lot of people look to find leaders in their field. And obviously, the more present you are on the more social media, the more engaged your audience will be. Same thing as marketing, and that's actually one thing that really makes social media difficult to measure. Even in our session description, we said social media is the new advertising. But in a sense, it's not the new advertising, it's just a hat that you can put on top of your advertising. And in one of our slides, we also talk about how Super Bowl companies are, Super Bowl advertisers, the biggest companies in the world, are now putting hashtags within their ads because they don't want that communication process to just end with a TV commercial or end with someone looking it up on YouTube. They want to put a hashtag on that commercial so that people will also respond to it and be like, you know, this is the funniest commercial I've seen in a long time, hashtag, you know, Papa John's. And with that, people will begin, you know, a conversation, and you'll be getting both positive and negative feedback just off a hashtag that you can use to improve your marketing. So again, it's not replacing your marketing, it's complementing it.
And if you think about it, I know a lot of people that may not carry a wallet with them or a watch or anything, but they'll always have their cell phone with them. And when they see a commercial or an advertisement that has that hashtag, all they have to do is kind of reach for their phone and start interacting with that company. And for you guys are at the center of that. You guys provide those devices, so you guys have a really clear advantage in that market.
So yeah, so on these points we have marketing is really literal. You're trying to drive sales, you're trying to drive website visits, and social media does the same. But like we said, social media is an opportunity for your company to close that loop. Instead of it just being messages that you're sending out through your ads, through your billboards and what have you, social media allows your audience to respond to you and give you feedback and communicate in a two-way medium. So again, it's about building relationships, stimulating further discussion, getting feedback, and really developing trust. I think in our industry, there's so much diversity of products, operating systems, apps, and it's all complex and changing every day. And that's one of the most exciting things about wireless is that it's so cutting edge. And like Omar was saying in the previous session, people are very, very personally connected to the devices they use and the way they communicate with their family and friends on them. So you're a part of that. You're part of that intimate relationship with their device and with their social media usage.
And I think it definitely helps reputation. So when they see that you're constantly delivering fresh content, they think that, okay, wow, if I go to that store, I'll expect the same level of service, that they'll always know the latest stuff. They won't have to go to 3 or 4 different stores to try to get the best information, because they'll come to know you as the person that delivers that recent information.
One of the things too that people quickly learn about social media is that they expect it to really be an opportunity to communicate with their customers in a promotional way. Like we're having a sale on these phones, or come in by Friday and you get a special discount. So it does definitely have all of those marketing benefits, but suddenly they're learning that their customers are contacting them with questions or problems that they're having with the phone they bought from you and stuff. So we have a quote later on talking about how they expected it to be more sales driven and promotionally driven, but it turns out that 80 to 90% of the feedback and engagement they get from their customers is customer service related. So in that respect, you need to understand that you may be getting a lot of support questions on Twitter or Facebook, or questions about the products they bought from you. So just have that in mind when you're setting aside resources or trying to staff for your social media marketing team. They may be getting a lot of support questions, so you might have to loop in somebody from your support department to quickly respond to those, in a team effort.
So an important thing to remember about brand is they'll perceive you that way. So you have to think about, again, how you want to be perceived. And obviously the great advantage is that you can shape it however you want, and you can shape it in many different ways. So for example, do you want to be viewed as connected, always acting as the source between you to customers and the carriers, that, yep, I always have the latest information on the newest phones, newest accessories, how to get the best support. There's also wanting to be knowledgeable, which helpful, and to show that, okay, if you do have an issue, you don't have to come to my store. You can use it through social media, at least to start that conversation. And if it escalates, then obviously they can come in for more help. But at the same time, again, it stops them from going to competitors when they can just come to you.
You also want to demonstrate your knowledge. Your presence in social media is really an extension of your brand. And the way you interact with your customers on Twitter or on Facebook, or even the YouTube videos you put out, that's how your customer base is gonna think of you. So you really need to put your best face forward and try to identify as many of these characteristics as you can. And knowledgeable is definitely one of them.
I just want to give you a shout out, and you kind of respond to that quickly. That reputation for your business, and they'll know, yeah, if I go there, I don't have to wait, half an hour lineup or wait 20 minutes to get an answer, because they're just so responsive.
Shows that you care.
Yeah.
Dependability is huge on social media as well, and relates directly to the speed at which you respond to your inquiries on social media. You need to be there, you need to be available, and a lot of companies falter in that respect. They have a presence, they sort of set their social media strategy into motion, but it just sort of sits there as a hollow shell. Some people's company Facebook pages haven't been updated since July or something like that, and so you really need to stay on top of it and be dependable to your customers and the different audiences you communicate with.
And at the end of the day, you want social media to be fun. You want people to want to follow you. You want people to want to interact with you. So some of the ideas that we've seen is when people, post a funny picture with your phone, or when you go on vacation, and they'll have a little contest or promotion around that. And it helps you with your brand, and it helps the customers get promotion through your social influence.
One of the best things about social media and showing your brand personality is showing that you don't take yourselves too seriously. And some of the best ads you see on TV really associate a brand with being hip and having a sense of humor. So by all means, try to incorporate those positive traits within your social media personality too.
Is that why you're so cool?
I try to be funny, but I don't know. We'll get back to that. what social media, what social network should you use? Okay, so we covered Twitter, we covered Facebook and Google+, YouTube. Just like IQ Metrics, you should be on all of these. But these ones, IQ Metrics, we're not really present on, but you should consider being on them. And these are Foursquare, go on. Instagram and Pinterest, especially within the younger generation. Kids nowadays are constantly checking in on Foursquare, taking photos of where they're at. It's really, for bragging rights, but also to let their friends and family and people they're connected to know what they're up to. And Instagram and Pinterest in particular are ways in which not only young people but all users express themselves and show, this is like, I thought this shirt was really cool. These are the kind of sneakers that I really like. My favorite Coach handbag, I'm going to pin that on Pinterest to show, all my followers that like I have really good taste. This is my style. And for wireless retailers in particular, phones are pretty commoditized. Everybody's phone sort of looks the same. Like I have an iPhone and it looks like everybody else's. How do people express themselves and differentiate their phones? Phone cases. So if you have really sweet phone cases, you might want to create a Pinterest account and every week identify what your most popular phone case was that week, so that people who are actually following these brands and really like this particular style or design can identify you as a style leader and really a taste maker for something that they can express themselves with. So Instagram and Pinterest, it's a really fun promotional device for retailers, and more companies are starting to use it. And one thing too is you can't always connect sales with Pinterest, but what you can connect with Pinterest is brand impressions and really driving your reputation with your customer base.
And at the end of the day, what the core foundation that these things are built on is really a couple of steps. Is post something, content, picture, text, and then have people respond to it, whether that's Facebook or Twitter or Foursquare or even Instagram is really socially connected.
That whole peer approval process is huge for social media, and that's why every one of them has a like or a +1, or even Twitter had to introduce it too as favoriting. It's a way for everyone to show their endorsement for something and show their approval that they like it and that they associate themselves and their social media account with that statement or with that product. So if you really want to get more endorsements, you need to be as present as you can. Social media growth is going to take time, and I think many of you manage the social media output for your company. You know this as well as anybody. You can start an account, but they won't necessarily come right away. So you got to really pay attention to what works. And the first step you need to do is get followers and get likes. So that's really the very first step of any social media strategy, is expanding your reach as well as you can and going from there. The second step is engaging in a conversation. So once you already have assembled this room, for example, let's use that as a metaphor. Once you've already filled the room, what are you going to say to them, and what do you want them to say back? So at this point, you really need to understand what kind of information do your customers want. What kind of questions are they coming into your store to ask you? How can you facilitate that conversation in a virtual format, so that when they're sitting at their desk and their phone, someone's up with their phone, they don't have to wait till the workday's over to come and see you. They can tweet right at you, and you'll respond. They'll be like, wow, Tom's Wireless is really on top of it, and they'll say thanks, on Twitter, on a tweet, and if that person has 1,000 followers, 1,000 people see them going, Tom's Wireless is the bomb, like, thanks so much, So if you can generate these type of viral promotional responses, that's even better than advertising. All those people are going to see that and be like, wow, they really handle their customer service well.
And earlier when we talked about who you use social media with, and one of the ones on there was partners, and for us, same thing. We really have that correspondence together where we'll put something up and then they'll send it to their social media following them, and vice versa.
For sure. We're going to have to fire through some slides. I didn't realize there was a 127. We're having some fun. Collaboration and relationship management. So coming back to our room and social media network metaphor, we have you in the room. We're in the conversation, but it's really one way right now. The third step is collaboration, so that'll be our Q&A period after we're done presenting. We really want to open it up so that people can talk and share and collaborate and improve, and that's the key. What your audience wants after you start communicating with them is results, and you know, you can promote the hell out of whatever you're trying to sell them, but if you don't really provide them value and show them that you're listening, take their feedback to improve your store, to improve your merchandising, store layout, or whatever, they're not going to feel like anything has come of that relationship. So you really need to show them that you're going to respond. Relationship management is the fourth and final stage of any social media strategy. You need to keep it going. So, okay, you create this room, you got the collaborative process going, you've shown them some solutions to problems, you got to do it again, and all of this keeps happening over time. And the more you do it, the better reputation you'll have, and the more people will depend on you to communicate.
And it sounds like a lot, but you'd be surprised how within 10-15 minutes per week, how much you can accomplish with these. But at the core of this is to listen, really listen. Don't just send out messages for the sake of messages. And this is an example that we got from the internet that really talks about customer relationships. So this one, just to set it up a bit, is about someone who went to a restaurant. They're really excited that that they got this recommendation through this online company to visit this restaurant. So they tweeted out at the restaurant, at Brasserie Pavel, coming for dinner tonight. Excited to try BP for the first time. Any Twitter specials? Won't be there until after 8. And this was at 1:18 p.m. So after dinner, they tweeted out again at the company saying, just ate at BP, and it was not very good. Flix and Food, which is the company that they got the recommendation from, you got to tell me why you like it. This was so disappointing. And keep an eye out on the timestamp. So they sent that Twitter out at 8:12.
They might have just finished eating and their meal was horrible, so they tweeted that immediately.
But 6 minutes later, the restaurant tweeted at that person to respond to them saying, hey, we're really sorry to hear that you were disappointed when dining with us. Please direct message us your number so we can contact you. And again, a couple of days later, they said at BP, thank you for the super customer service. It's nice to know you truly care. Looking forward to the next meal. And everybody sees this is a conversation that everybody can get in on, and that's going on.
A lot of major companies do this sort of relationship management every day. They have big teams of people managing negative feedback that comes in, and even positive feedback that comes in, so they can retweet it. Fully understanding that not every business has that many resources, even just to put a member of your sales team, for example, on Twitter for a half hour a day, you know, like that gives them a break from selling on the floor. They might really enjoy that. So you get them to check on the company account. If anything's come in, they can respond on behalf of the company. Not only do they have fun doing it, but they're also invested in the social media process that your business is doing. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be you hiring someone strictly to do social media. There are ways to incorporate, especially your younger staff, to help you do this kind of thing as well.
Yeah. So when you are in a situation like this, the strategy is really twofold. One, you want to address the issue in public, so everybody realizes that they responded to that company.
Public. So.
And then the second part is really try to take it offline. So again, they're not involved in that conversation. So that's why they said direct message us your phone number, and then that way you can really take care of them on a one-on-one basis. There's another cool infographic that we pulled off that really highlights some of the points that we're trying to make. And there's a lot of numbers on it, but the two that I wanted to highlight is the top one and the middle one. So the top one talks about how many enterprises use social media to respond to negative customer feedback. And by 2010, there was 25% of enterprises that use social media for that. But that's projected to go to 90% in 2010. And those 8 years will fly by, and I think even within the past 2 years that's gone up to closer to 40%. The other one, 58%, that talks about, similar to the example that we just showed, how many customers tweet or send a message to a company about poor service, and 58% of them never receive a response back.
So even the biggest companies in the world aren't as responsive as they need to be to a lot of the negative messages that they get on Twitter or on Facebook or what have you. So really there's a communicative gap that needs to be bridged, and Twitter, for example, is one of the best places to do that in a public forum. Really ups your brand credibility.
And they go on to say that within a few short years, not responding to someone on social media will be just as bad as today not responding to someone that leaves you a voicemail or an email. It will be that important and that core to your customer service.
Timing is huge for all social media campaigns. You need to understand when your audience is listening and promote and generate content based on that schedule. This graph here shows the number of campaigns in the white bar that are sent out by companies, and the green bar identifies how much engagement they've gotten from those campaigns. Now, Friday, for whatever reason, was the most popular day for sending out social media engagement messaging on Facebook, in particular in this one. But it turned out that Tuesday has the highest engagement rate. So people just aren't paying as much attention on Friday as they are on Tuesday. And so again, this varies from company to company, and you really need to track different metrics using Google Analytics, or even just seeing how many retweets or replies you get from certain tweets that you put out, and sort of follow those rhythms accordingly. And yeah, and that's really just to maximize the efficiency of how you're generating content.
And again, it goes back to knowing who your audience is. So for us, we have a lot of partners on the East Coast and West Coast, so we have to be conscious what time we send out those tweets. It could be as early as 5 a.m. to hit them on their way to work.
You need to send the same message twice just to cover all your all your time zones and stuff.
And whether that's like a school day or work day or whatever it may be.
I mean, your audience is totally different from this audience. This is like a Monday to Friday audience. You might find that your engagement rate is way higher on the weekends, because that's when people come to see you, or they're thinking about buying a new phone or what have you. So you really need to pay attention to your store traffic and also people's engagement levels on your different social media.
And again, the key is always to listen. At first, seeing all these different social media channels, you might be overwhelmed, and you really can if you just kind of wait for everything to come in and try to deal with it all at once. But
so much noise.
So like forums, blogs, which we have that you keep an eye on, review sites similar to the restaurant, trade sites, social networks. So when you have all this information coming, you don't want to just respond with a canned response. What you want to do is, first of all, collect it, have a way of managing that and collecting it, and then process it. See which ones are just noise, which ones actually need to be responded to, and who needs to respond to it and how. And analyze, figure out how it affects your business, how much work you want to put into it. And then you can either incorporate that into your website if it's consistent feedback with banners or email campaigns, or you can use it incorporate it in your social media strategy. But really listen to what the message they're sending to you.
We're going to talk about that a little in a couple slides actually, about how Twitter, you can sort of filter out all the noise and really get to the messaging that you want to take action on.
Yeah, there's really cool tools on that.
So we have a bunch of Twitter best practices to share with you too. In terms of tracking results, there are a number of things that you need to pay attention to. We won't have time to really get into how Google Analytics helps you do all of this, but even Facebook Insights, within Facebook, you can open up graphs to see how many people saw a given post, how many people responded to it, and the type of engagement levels that Facebook uses to identify how people are connecting with you. Frequency, like we said, is huge. What day do you get the most hits? What day do you get the most responses to your tweets? You need to pay attention to that so that you can keep sort of keeping an effective rhythm. Social reach. Who are the followers that are most active and have the most followers themselves? Again, this is a spidering out process that you want to take advantage of. So obviously, keep track of who follows you and who has the most followers, so that when it comes time to ask them a question, or based on their engagement, you know that you're going to get an answer because they're always on their Twitter, for example. These are your sort of key mavens, as many marketers call it, people that can really be effective brand endorsers to a bigger audience for you. Clicks is obvious, and if you use Google Analytics, you can see which parts of your website are getting the most attention. You should connect your social media to that too. If you have one page that's getting tons and tons of hits, you should also tweet a link to that, because it means there's a lot of people that are curious about that information. Identify what people want to know and give it to them. Actions, and this is again something we were talking about before. If you can create an incentive for people to do something on social media that involves your brand, like, hey, did you buy a Samsung Galaxy S3 from us? Show us or post some cool pictures on Twitter or Instagram that you've taken with your camera using that time-lapse feature, and we'll pick the best one and you get a prize. So at this point, you're really incentivizing their usage of the device you sold them, but also engaging with them on social media. All right, so this is a slide about Twitter best practices. Farshid, let's take it. Yeah.
Sure. So it sounded like most of you are already on Twitter, so we can just fly by these. But again, having a short handle, especially for your business, if you have a long name, you just don't want to copy and paste that into Twitter because it will eat up those 140 characters. What you want to do is really shorten it to save time. And then the other thing is when people respond to you and they include your name, it also eats into their tweet, so be aware of that as well. Hootsuite and TweetDeck are two of the management tools that people use for social media. We use Hootsuite at IQ Metrics. One of the keys, as we mentioned earlier, is really being able to schedule your messages years ahead of time. So if we have promotions, for example, for the summit, we did a lot of those.
Yeah,
when we get
scheduling tweets, it allows you to just post them so that they can be scheduled later on in the week, for example. Yeah. That way you don't have to go back into Twitter and do it again, manually. It's also awesome for managing different social networks at once. You can plug your LinkedIn, your Google+, your Facebook, and your Twitter all into Hootsuite or TweetDeck and manage them all on a dashboard format, so you're not jumping from one browser, one window to the next. It's really, really time-saving strategy.
And it helps with cross-promotion. We have our partners send us 10, 20 tweets at a time, and we'll just schedule it weeks at a time, and then we do that every quarter.
Yeah, it takes the manual labor right out of it.
Yeah, and repeat your tweets. Again, to give whether it's a time of day or if news is happening throughout the day, whether it's the iPhone release or BlackBerry news or anything that has to do with that, make sure that that's sporadic throughout the day. And use hashtags. That's the way that people, similar to what we're doing, so everybody that messages, all you have to do is search for that hashtag. It's kind of like doing a Google search, and it'll just bring that up. And they can just leave that on their screen and just kind of follow it throughout the day.
Even at the event we're all at right now, we created the IQ Summit hashtag so that we could put the best quotes, the best ideas, whatever people are saying, at the keynote, for example, I tweeted some of the quotes that Phil Strickland had for us this morning because that guy was hilarious. So I was just putting those up and being like, these are sort of the highlights. And that way you're creating a conversation based on an event or based on a promotion that you might be having at your store, and people can just weigh in immediately rather than having to tweet at your company. It's topical.
And even if you don't start the hashtag, but there is a popular hashtag and you start using that, you'll be part of that big conversation that's going on.
URL shorteners are big because they help you obviously abbreviate your URLs for whatever links you send out. The new Twitter app actually does that for you, but the problem with that is it'll automatically shorten your link, but it just shows it as the first part of the link and then ... so it's clickable. But the problem with that is sometimes people will just quote your tweet and it'll just quote the ... and it's not clickable anymore. So if you use something like Bitly or TinyURL or any of these websites, they can help you keep your link intact, so regardless of whether they quote it or retweet it or whatever, it's always clickable. So that's just one thing to think about. Following back is huge. Again, you got to show your audience that you care, and when they see that the business that they really appreciate follows them back, they feel good about it.
And don't use a lot of companies, they have an automated message, so as soon as you follow them, they're like, hey, thank you for following IQ Metrics, we appreciate it. People can see right through that, and already shows that there isn't someone that's always looking after that. So personalize it.
Be personalized.
Yeah.
And be human, because when it feels like a robot, nobody likes that.
Use lists a lot, right?
What's that?
Twitter lists?
Yeah, oh yeah, lists. Okay, this one's huge actually. I want to keep moving quickly so that we can get into the discussion portion, but Twitter lists is the #1 way to sift through all the chaos of Twitter. Anyone that's new to Twitter realizes very quickly, the more people you follow, the noisier it gets. So if you're following 1,000 people, your home feed is just like overwhelming. And it could be from, if you're into football, you're getting all kinds of football tweets. If you're into music, if you're into tech, if you're into food, it's just like tech, food, football, it's crazy. So what you really need to do is categorize it based on what your interests are. And for me in particular, I categorize all of our followers, or all the people we're following, sorry, as partners, as clients, as tech, as social media, as whatever my interests are personally too. On my personal one, I'm really into hip hop, so I've got a hip hop one, I've got a sports one, I've got a sneakers one. That way, instead of being like what's happening in the world and being inundated with tweets, you can just say, I want to know what's new, in the world of sports, and it's all clean.
It's very similar to having favorites in a Google search bar that you can just click on and it'll have your content right there.
Yeah, so it's like creating your Google News feed within Twitter, and again, it's just a really great way to disseminate knowledge and consume knowledge.
Yeah, and again, that's just an FYI. We talked a lot about Twitter, but here's why. There's 140 million users, and it's literally growing minute by minute. 50% of users are on mobile. Again, you guys are at the center of that, so it should be really easy for you to incorporate that into it. And 40% growth by each quarter. Users, they're active. They send 1 billion tweets every 3 days. So if you're going to have a Twitter account, again, make sure that you can match up to that.
You need lists because it's just too busy.
No. And again, 60% of users tweet, 100% are listening. So a lot of times people, when they're looking to follow someone and they don't have any followers, they're not interested in them because they're like, oh, they're not popular, they're not going to help my cause. But they could be really influential in their own world. They're just not following anybody. They use Twitter to receive messages and then use it in other mediums.
A lot of my buddies are that way too. They're on Twitter, but they don't really generate, they're not really outspoken in terms of Twitter. They just use it to consume news and really use it as an aggregator to see what's happening. So just because they're not tweeting doesn't mean they're not engaged.
And they use it to get information. So 79% will follow somebody if they think that's how they're going to get the latest headlines rather than going to news sites or anything like that.
Again, this is about delivering value to your audience. A lot, especially in your industry, in wireless retail, people are going to follow you because they want to get information, they want to get deals, they want to be notified when the next device is coming out, when they're due for an upgrade, and that's the value you're going to be able to convey to them via social media, so you need to be understanding of that. Again, there's a Super Bowl stat we had, and again, promoted tweets, this is where Twitter isn't as good as Google. Google, obviously, we have AdWords campaigns and promoted search results, and when you do that, you're advertising via that search engine. But Twitter doesn't work like that. You only get 1 to 3% engagement from promoted tweets. So this is still a nascent field for Twitter. It's great for driving brand recognition, not great for driving sales or promotions in that sense. So really, the promoted tweets isn't where you should be. It should be in the genuine tweets that you're sending from your own account to specific people.
And to show that, yeah, there is a downside to Twitter, we'll show a couple examples of some campaigns that kind of went sideways.
Yeah. McD stores, we gotta move. I didn't realize how verbose we were gonna be. We have McD stories, Bic for Her, at Bic for Her, and Rogers One Number. These are 3 examples of Twitter campaigns that went awry for different companies for different reasons. And the biggest reason for McD Stories and Rogers One Number was the hashtag, it was too vague. What it did was it invited the Twitter community to just capitalize on that hashtag just to rant. So people were saying, oh yeah, I had a gross Big Mac McD Stories. It actually became really ironic and people were making fun of it. Instead, it should have been like the previous campaign that McDonald's had. They had a hashtag, Meet the Farmers. And that was really, really well received by the Twitter community because it associated McDonald's with farmers. And when you start doing something like that where there's a human connection with real people, real farmers that are producing fresh produce and vegetables and beef and all the food that McDonald's is preparing, it's produced by farmers. No one's going to really try to diss that because they don't want to be associated with, they want people to think that they're anti-farmers, So when they did that campaign, it was really successful. But when they did McD Stories, it was just too vague and allowed people to rant. And same with Rogers One Number. Rogers is the biggest wireless carrier in Canada. They were trying to promote their brand using that hashtag, and it was really cheap and really salesy. And the community also started just ranting about their Rogers service, etc. At Bic for Her was a pen that Bic had created just for women. And it actually was really controversial and really funny. People started making fun of at Bic for Her all over the web, and especially the feminist community were really in an uproar about it, mainly because everyone knows there's no way you can differentiate a pen for a man and a pen for a woman. Pens are for everyone. So they revealed the product as being completely narrow-minded, and they took it out on them on Twitter. So
I'm keeping you on a timer.
It's really fun.
I'm going to keep you on a timer.
I know, this is crazy. I didn't know I had so much.
You have like 3 seconds for the slide.
This one, I already talked about this. Pinterest is so big for retailers. More and more retailers going on there. Different industries like hardware, apparel, housewares, mass merchant, and specialty and non-apparel are putting their brands and the products they're selling on Pinterest because they know that it drives a lot of impulse buys. Social media is not your brand savior. Don't put all your eggs in the basket. It's just like marketing. I feel like an auctioneer right now. Honestly, we're reiterating a lot of the same things. We want you to be human, be real, and you'll get the best engagement you can imagine.
And we do have a takeaway, but again, the point is when you're on social media, don't be antisocial. Don't just look at it through a social media lens. So when someone wants to communicate to you, like, hey, my name is Emily, don't just be like, what's your Twitter handle? Communicate with them in a human voice.
Yeah, these are some quotes that we wanted to go through. Great content is based on real insights. People want to deal with real people, not companies, so don't be a robot and don't be a salesman. Be a real person, that's what they want. Social engagement is inextricably linked to social media and search engine optimization, so you got to be on there. It's just being like this is like being on the internet. You need to create value, and you want to develop relationships with your customers, so the better you can do that on social media, the more long-term your customers will be. Okay, Jamie Wright asked, have you used or recommend social media internally to build company relationships, discussion, and industry discovery among employees?
Great question.
Absolutely, that's a great question. We have that at IQ Metrics. We have an internal private Facebook page that everyone posts both fun and industry-specific stuff, wireless stuff, retail stuff on, so that we can share information and really discuss different ways that applies to our company. And it's also a great way to share like fun videos like the ones that we made for the summit and stuff. So yeah, we definitely use that as an internal channel. And not only is that fun, but it also increases your employee engagement like so much.
And you can lock it down so that information doesn't get seen by anybody outside of the company.
How many full-time dedicated employees do we have just working with social media? At IQ Metrics, specifically, one person, me. So I'm really busy with all of it, but again, people are asking me, how much time do you spend on Twitter? How much time do you spend working on Facebook and LinkedIn? Because I use Hootsuite, I do it all at once, and we schedule it, and it's actually really efficient. And anything I blog about, I share it across all of our social media. So it actually is really quite quick in terms of content generation. And how long does it take me to retweet all the news that we curate in the mornings? 15 minutes. That's all I allow myself, is 15 minutes to go through the different lists that I was talking about and really pull the best material. And that's how we do it. Every day we have a 15-minute meeting between our different bloggers within the company, and that's how we determine our daily dose of IQ blog topic for the day. We share news for 15 minutes. We say, what's the best story today? And we blog about it. So it might be something that you guys can have a conversation at your weekly huddle. You have your sales managers come in for a weekly meeting. You'd be like, what should we blog about today? What are our customers asking about?
And just to wrap it up, we did put a cheat sheet for you guys that will have the highlights.
Don't be afraid to tweet at us directly. We want to be accountable to you guys for this session. So yeah, at Farsh_tweets, at Poonisms, that's my nickname. My nickname's Poon. Long story. But yeah, we'd love to continue this discussion online. If you have any other questions to ask, fire away. Okay, yeah.
Do you recommend paying for tweets or likes on Facebook?
I don't. Not cash, but a prize, yes. And that's something that we did last year at the summit. If you tweeted at IQ Metrics with the IQ Summit, actually it was DeliverWow hashtag last year. I don't know if some of you did that, but you can definitely drive engagement with it, but it doesn't seem cheap if it's a prize. As soon as it's money, I don't really think it's worth the investment, to be honest.
Creativity will always trump cash. And some of the companies that have the biggest amount of followers, they never paid a dime for them.
And you'll be amazed at the kind of response you can get by just giving away one phone. You might get thousands and thousands and thousands of tweets just for giving away one of the newest phones that you have in your store. So again, you have to weigh out the costs and the benefits, but like anything, you need a carrot and a stick sometimes too, because sometimes they're just not getting the value they want out of your social media engagement. And to stimulate that relationship, you do need to provide incentives.
Yeah, and if you bring them in just for that, then they really won't interact with you, because they'll just wait for the next promotion.
Regarding Facebook, how many posts per day or posts per week do you suggest?
What we do is we post at least once a day. But there really isn't a rule of thumb for frequency. It's really what kind of content are you generating, and if it's really awesome, like you can post 3 times a day. The worst thing about it though is overposting. So the best question isn't how much should you do, it's how much is too much. And I'm a really active Facebook user, and I just go on anecdotal feedback that I get. For example, if I'm taking a picture of what I eat every day for lunch, people are going to be like, dude, that's too much. And so I react accordingly. Sometimes I have something I want to share or an opinion I want to post on Facebook. Facebook is not the place for all that stuff. You know what is? Twitter. Some people, you can tweet like 100 times a day and people won't get sick of it. So it's really, again, learning what frequency works for your audience. And Facebook, I would suggest max 3 a day, and maybe at least once every 3 days. So yeah, rule of 3 would probably work best.
I think we're officially out of time. Again, thanks everyone for taking an hour out of your day.
Thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, check out our cheat sheet. Tweet some questions to us if you have any additional ones, and you can also contact us via email. We love discussing this kind of thing. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the summit.